Hi, this time I want to share my thoughts and impressions about this little device. preenFM2, 6 operator 4-part multi-timbral FM synthesizer. This is an open source project and it's one developer behind that, so it's kind of an indie project. You can build one yourself if you have time and skills. I just didn't want to spend time building this because I have lots other stuff to do, and I found a maker on eBay who makes them and sells them, and I got this one for about $200. If you're interested, ask me in the comments. I'll leave you a link to that eBay seller. So this build is pretty good. You see this translucent acrylic glass enclosure. The buttons are pretty good. The encoders, okay. Nothing special, they work. The only issue I found with this design is that viewing angle of the display, because the way you usually look at it, it kind of fades away. And from the top it's perfect, and from the side as well, but not from kind of 45 degrees. So, but that's not a big issue for me, because finally I ended up using the software editor for this device. But the hardware interface, let's have kind of a quick overview, is not bad actually. So with these buttons you kind of navigate all the pages, operators, various settings within an operator, kind of modulation matrix, and here we have our instances or parts, 4 parts total. It's 4-part multi-timbral, like 24 voices in total about that. It has no effects apparently, and you're gonna need kind of external effects to make it sound good, because FM, unlike the analog synths, without the effects they won't sound good. And this device is basically my another venture into the FM synthesis. I thought it will help me to finally get into FM synthesis, because I tried various plugins over the years, like Native Instruments FM7, FM8, some other stuff. And I thought maybe this thing will help me and encourage me to go deeper into FM. And it worked to some extent. But first I thought I will use this hardware interface to program sounds. And it didn't work for me. Then I discovered it has the editor, and we'll check it later in the video. And the editor is really good. I like the interface, and I use it to program a few sounds. So we'll see how this thing works, how it sounds, and we'll try to use it with BlueARP plugin and the BlueARP hardware as well. So I connected preenFM2 to the computer via USB, which is necessary for the control application to work. I routed through this Zoom FX pedal, and I have MIDI input from the keyboard here. This is preenFM editor, the control software. The way it works is you set the MIDI in and out ports here. It's connected via USB, and you set the MIDI channel. Because it's 4-part multi-timbral, you can have 4 individual parts. I can play this already. This is the bass sound I programmed. Here we have our 4 operators. Here we have our algorithm. We can change algorithms, and the sound will apparently change. This is one of the cool things. You can program the sound with one algorithm and then try it with another algorithms, and sometimes it will lead to happy accidents. Here we have our modulation amounts, and if I change any of these, it apparently alters the sound. And FM synthesis is famous for this kind of noisy metallic sounds, and it's quite easy to get into that domain. And really, you have to try hard to keep it kind of warm enough and make it kind of good sounding. Still, I think a bit too much. What else? We have our modulation metrics here, which I apparently don't use in these patches. We have our pen filters, some basic arpeggiator here, kind of low pass, high pass, and various types of filters, which I don't use either. Note scaling is something like kind of key tracking in many synthesizers, so you can use it as a modulation, the pitch. So what I like about this software is that it is so intuitive. It's really easy to grasp. Apart from the complexity of FM synthesis itself, it's very well laid out. So you have the algorithms, you have the modulations here drawn on this picture, and you have modulation amounts here, and here are your operators and the envelopes, and here are your modulations, and it's pretty easy. I wish there was a FM synth plugin looking exactly like this, because in native instruments, for example, and here we go, this is the problem I have from time to time, that it can't save its state, and reloading the project will help. Yeah, so these are few problems, is the stability of this software. I don't know, maybe this is my system, but I read the forums and there are complaints from few other people as well. So first, sometimes it just loses USB connection for no apparent reason. And second, it on each project load, it reverts MIDI channel back to 1 sometimes. For another instances I have here, for example, this one, I have channel 2 here, but when it will load, it will go back to 1, and voices, number of voices. Now I have 4, but since I reload the project, it will reset back to 1 for no apparent reason. So I think just probably a bug in the software. But there's a workaround. You can just set it manually each time you load the project, and it's still usable. It's still usable, but not perfect. It's good, but not perfect because of that. But still you can use it, and I like this software, and probably without this software editor I wouldn't program the patches I programmed here, because the hardware interface, I just couldn't get used to it. Probably that's me, but yeah, I found the software much more convenient to edit patches. So this is the bass I programmed here. I use BlueARP as well, and this is one of my favorite bass lines. I used it years before I made BlueARP, or even the first prototype of BlueARP. And we're gonna cover one of my favorite songs ever, Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode. I already have 2 covers on my channel, this is gonna be the 3rd one. But well, I tried various themes, and this sounded so great that I couldn't resist it. This is another theme. It's like bell sound. Goes like this. Here we fix to A minor scale. Here we have this main kind of guitar pattern from Personal Jesus, which is played by this kind of metallic sound. And together it sounds like this. Cool. But what I want to do, I want to move it to the BlueARP DM, to the hardware unit, and make a DAWless performance with these patterns I programmed here. To transfer this stuff to the BlueARP DM, I will save a bank from each of the plugins to the SD card I inserted. So I have folder Personal Jesus. I'll call this one bank for channel 1, and I'll do the same for all the other instances of BlueARP I will have here. Save to file, bank. This one will be channel 2, and the same for channel 3 and 4. Now, sorry for flickering, I don't know how to fix it in my phone, but here I go to page 11 file and I want to load bank. We are now on instance 1. I go to personal Jesus folder and load bank for channel 1. It's loaded. Then I switch to instance 2 and load the bank for channel 2. Then I switch to instance 3 and load bank for channel 3. And the same with instance 4. So we have all the stuff here. Next we have to go to routing page and make sure we have MIDI input from DIN1, that's correct. And for the output ports we have to set channel 2 for instance 2 and channel 3 for instance 3, and the same for instance 4. Now we have MIDI routing correct, and our tempo is 120. And now this keyboard is connected into DIN1 input of BlueARP, and we can check, kind of first basic check, if we have the MIDI signal. We'll go to MIDI monitor page. Yeah, we have it. And we see it kind of generates notes. And I have some basic drum pattern programmed here. It goes like this. Now I decided to do the other way, to send MIDI clock from BlueARP to the Electribe. So I connected MIDI out D to MIDI in Electribe. And here I have to select global and MIDI clock, set it to external. And here for MIDI output DIN D, I sent MIDI clock to play, which will mean it will send MIDI clock only when the playback is started. And now let's check it. Something wrong. It didn't start for some reason. Again, I mixed up MIDI cables because I have such a mess here. So we have DIN D clock is on. This one goes here. And if I hit play on the BlueARP DM, this one starts playback automatically. And what I want to do next is to send program changes from BlueARP DM to Cork Electribe. So it will switch drum patterns when I switch meta chains here. To make it possible on the routing page, I'm changing MIDI output to DIN D for instance 8, which will drive program changes on the Electribe. And here's the magic. Now I'm on instance 8. I have chain 1. And if I change this program number right now, it changes here as well because it sends program change message. So this way I will switch my patterns on the Electribe. I'll set up a few chains for the few programs I have here. Like I have the main drum loop and I have a couple of breaks. So I'll switch them on the fly. And now let's incorporate it into meta chains. I have 3 meta chains here. Instances 1 to 4 are the same, and instance 8 differs, and I call them the same way. Main, break 1 and break 2. And now I can switch meta chains with this button on the fly while I play. The trick here with instancate, which will send program changes to electribe, is to send chain quantize to off, since we want to send the program change message immediately when we switch the chain. Before that actual new bar starts, because here it's aligned to the bar start, this program switches, program change messages, and you can change that. So now I think we're ready to play the whole thing. Again, this is the whole DAWless setup I use here. Kurzweil is just a MIDI keyboard in this scenario. BlueARP is sending MIDI clock to Cork electribe, and it switches drum patterns on the fly, sending program change messages. BlueARP DM drives preenFM2 using all 4 instances, and preenFM2 is routed through this zoom effects pedal. And I'm gonna record all this stuff into my good old Zoom H2. So this was my experiment with preenFM2. Hope you enjoyed it. And third cover for Personal G's, apparently on my channel. What can I say as a conclusion? It's a great little synth, and it worked for me to start learning FM synthesis and to get into these algorithms and to get some feeling kind of that I understand how these algorithms and the sound are connected together. It has great design. The interface is minimalistic, but it's okay. There is a software editor, and my main complaint again is that it loses USB connection and doesn't save its state sometimes, so there can probably bugs in the software. But other than that, the hardware is stable. I didn't have any crashes with it. I can recommend it, and especially if you are a DIY person, you can assemble one yourself for very reasonable money. Um, as for BlueARP DM, I hope my next video in a couple of weeks will be announcement of the sales start. I got it delayed because I'm waiting for some stuff. I want to make a nice package for it. It deserves it, I think. So yeah, I'm waiting for some stuff, and I have a few units assembled, and I will kind of announce sales start soon. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.